So for today's meeting, we will talk about the history of the Environmental Justice Leadership Summit, the Environmental Justice Summit in 1991, and talk about the EJ principles. We'll then at 5 o'clock have a panel discussion to talk about where we are now in policy solutions, and panelists, both discussions we'll have time for Q&A at the end. With all of that being said, I will pass it along to our next slide. Our next slide, I wanted to have a precursor of the 1991 Environmental Justice Summit with a quick video. So I'm going to stop share here for a second to pull up the video. Are y'all able to see the screen?
Yep, looks good.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that our teacher, Miss Anderson? That must be Mr. Bottles.
The city invests in affordable housing so teachers can be a bigger part of the
Oh, sorry.
communities they serve.
In your neighborhood, And we now must make a vow to one another that we will not let a day come in the future that we do not stand together and oppose any form of environmental justice anywhere in this world that we live. God bless you all.
Today, we hope to begin building a multiracial and multicultural environmental justice movement by discerning, recovering, and seeking ways to act upon our historical and cultural roots with respect to our environment.
All kinds of people think that the environment is one of the single most important issues that we need to deal with. And why is it that no national leaders have taken this on as an issue?
It's time to build an authentic coalition that represents the people affected. White, black, urban, rural, poor, working class, the nation is fighting for its life and the Lord's earth as he has created it.
Well, we worked for quite some time to try to move the chemical waste facility out of Alabama, but as you probably all know, that was almost impossible.
We now have information coming from Lualua on the island of Oahu that there is very high incidence of leukemia and other cancers among the Hawaiian children who live there.
For they may dump toxic waste on the poor side of town today, but as sure as the wind blows, as sure as it's one earth, what affects any of us in the morning affects the rest of us by sundown. We'll either live together as brothers and sisters or apart as schools. That's why there can be no elite environment. It must be universal.
The environment belongs to all of God's children. You assert that this evening. America will one day hear you. This I promise you.
Now I'll turn it over to Reverend Charlotte Keys to introduce herself and her involvement in the EJ Summit. So Dr. Keys?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I am traveling the road, coming from Georgia, headed to Mississippi. I'm in Alabama. I just wanted to share with you all, should I miss a few little points, I'm going to do my best, my recollection, talk about a little bit of the summit. Our first People of Color Summit was a huge blessing and undertaking for many of our communities and our academias and different organizations. We had struggles, battles, victories, Many things happened during that time, and I just sometimes even go back over the fact that we have lost many of the leaders in the movement. Daniel Smith played a vital role in our life, and Dion Ferris, Lawyers Committee at the time, Civil Rights Under Law, and being in at the summit, I want to say to Bernice Miller. I'm just trying to think of some of the old heads: Dana Austin, Peggy Shepard, Bob Bullard, Ben Chavis. I mean, the list goes on and on for many of us that have been working in this movement for a very long time and participated in that first People of Color Summit in the Indigenous community. Richard Moore, Tom Gotu, Pam Tarley, and a whole bunch of different ones. I don't want to not call the names, but nevertheless, what for me was the undertaking is the establishment of the environmental justice principles that were set forth as it relates to dealing with all of our communities and allowing all of us to come to the table and speak for ourselves as grassroots leaders. And also, I do remember as well being a part of Connie Tucker, Ann Braden, and some others with the Southern Organizing Committee. And also, I don't want to leave out even Pat Bryant, Gulf Coast Senate. I know, we have had different things to happen in our life in the movement, but God, still loves us all and wants us to always, be honorable and respectful of the hard work and effort that many have contributed to this movement to help make it be what it is in today's world. Mother Hazel Johnson was considered the mother of the environmental justice movement. And in my coming along, Dr. Ben Chavis was considered the father of the movement. But you had Charles Lee and many others, with the UCC. That Church of Christ, I think I remember Reverend Adora Lee. But nevertheless, that toxic waste and race report started a great deal to help move us to the environmental justice principles, from the environmental justice principles to the NEJAC committee that was established. Let's go here. The signing of the executive order played a vital role, the 12898. With that, I think we had also the interagency working group that came as a result of the environmental justice principles. Our communities have gone through quite a bit. But I still say that many of us have been blessed because we also have the environmental justice resource centers that developed from that. But it was some good laughter for many of us, and that was the establishment of really, to me, moving us full speed ahead and being where we are today. So many different things I, think about as we was looking at, the different needs. There is the medical or health need that we looked at. We put that as a priority, and I'm so thankful for Dr. Sheets working on the cumulative impact and stand with it. Because sometimes we get on things and we'll move away from a lot, but everyone is important in this movement, and the old pioneers of this movement have helped us to develop and to be the leaders, environmental climate justice leaders that we are today. And I know that because of all of these different administrations and what have you, different ones have taken many different positions, but let me say to each of you on the line, if no one ever say congratulations for the hard work and effort of being put in from the summit, from the executive order to all of the different the committees and things that have been established and everything that is happening now. But we still have a long ways to go as we're looking at the different administration and leadership that we have set up. But it has been really a blessing for many of us to be a part of this movement as we're dealing with clean, healthy, safe, green, clean, healthy, safe, and sustainable communities is all we have been seeking for, which deals with environmental justice at heart. When you're looking at the health, everyone's health is important. And we have lost so many of our people that has been in this at the ground floor fighting, and we had trouble even getting finances or resources down into these communities at the grassroots level. And I remember Public Welfare Foundation, and that was Dana. And I also remember Bernice even taking a role with the Ford Foundation and helping to do many things, and it was hard for us in Mississippi. Mississippi plays a vital role because we also come from the faith-based perspective. And actually, we worked from that because we was looking at the earth does not belong to us. We all are stewards of God's creation. And I got earth justice from Psalms 24:1 and Psalms 24:1, Proverbs 21:3. So when you put that together, you find out that we are stewards of God's creation, and all of us have a important role here to move forward. We come off the backs of many from that People of Color Summit. We really do. And not only that, when you backtrack, Mother Hazel Johnson, I heard the conversation even on yesterday as I was riding up here to Georgia about her starting doing the work in '79 about the toxic donut. All of these different groups, and I think it was Margaret William in Florida, and I know we had Regenesis and different ones. Many people have saw and received success from the work, the hard work that many of our elders have put in to helping move us forward. And Dr. Bullard, have written many books. But I want to say, too, that I cannot remember all of our, I'm trying to think, Texas, the Environmental Justice Resource Center. We had, was it Grover Hankins, I believe? We had quite a few resource centers established. And let us not forget to, in our moving forward, to keep one another in prayer. All we have here now, and I'm just saying this to you all because we're losing so many with this COVID or this pandemic. I call it the pandemic because of the things that's happening. It is just compounding the poisoning of the land, the air, and the water. It's just a compilation of things that we're dealing with. But the summit really helped set the pace through the multicultural, diverse leadership, because not only was we dealing with the African American community, but we were dealing with all people of color communities, and that's why it was so necessary, important to establish those environmental justice principles. And it have gone from the environmental justice principles to, I think we got climate justice principles. All of these things have derived from off the backs of the leaders, some of the ancestors that have passed on, but you still have many, and we have Dr. McLean, yes we do. You have Harold Mitchell and some others that prayerfully is yet alive and well. Rita Harris, I don't want to leave her out because she did some stuff in the Tennessee area, and the Bradshaws and many others. It's so many pieces to this movement, and the backs of those that have helped us to be where we are today. But I want to say let me go hear some of my elders and some of the technical ones that working in the legal, scientific, health and medical communities. You guys have done a superb job with fighting for justice for us. And then you have some political leaders, a few of them in the government agencies, folks. And of course, you cannot leave out the Environmental Justice Resource Centers because they have really played a vital role with helping us to move forward. It's just so much. And want to say too, give a shout out as well to my two, I don't want to say two. I got 4 big sisters perhaps on this line: Bernice Miller, hopefully Dion Ferris, Peggy Shepard, and Beverly Wright. I've hung out, and Mildred McLean. A lot of us have hung out. And Cheryl, your mother. I remember that little afro Mother Hazel had. I'm telling you, I have so much laughter, but I also have sometimes a little sour of heart because many of them are missed, but we got to keep going. And let us keep fighting for environmental climate justice, because some people say, when I say the word environment, I'm talking about everything that, we have to sustain us on a daily basis, the whole atmosphere. But since they've come up with the climate justice principle, Hermes principles, all of these principles has led us to this point to be where we are today. And the elders will be really proud of the youth now that have actually taken a great part in helping to learn and to utilize their professional skills in the movement. So I want to say to you all, I love you all very much. And I pray to Jesus I didn't leave out many. But I want all of you all to know I love you. And I really am grateful, too, that we had the environmental justice headquarters for us. We had a national headquarters, and I think it shut down for a minute. But I think Beverly and Donnell, and I forgot to mention Donnell, but Donnell, too, from Michigan. And I was part of the Coalition of Black Trade Unions with Carolyn Bell, and I think it was one other. I cannot call my sister's name, but I can see her. But I'm saying to you all, so many
Dion Ferris.
Yes, I got Dion Ferris. Yes, but it was another young lady that worked with Carolyn Bell with the CBTU. Donnell probably would know, and some of you all probably would know. But anyway, these are our elders that's still alive and well and helping to move us forward. And I'm growing and going in that direction. But I love you guys so much.
Odom?
You never know. Yes, Lula Odom. Yes.
Perfect.
I hope that
Clark still alive?
open.
Is Brother Clark still alive?
Huh?
Is Brother Clark still alive? Out of Richmond, California?
Yes. Oh, Brother Clark, yes. You know what? Like I said, I can't remember everybody's name. I can see faces in my head, and I'm traveling as well. But normally, if I'm sitting still, I have more, in the thought pattern. But it's so many facts of the elders that the young people is now riding off of, and we just want them to know that it covers all areas. You need engineers, you need all the scientists, the medical, the legal, the political leadership, government agency. We need to be everywhere, making sure that we have a seat at the table and we play a vital role with the stakeholders process, and that is what the leadership has been about, and that's what we've been fighting for. That we never get left out of nothing, because it is our communities that has been placed in jeopardy many, many years. When you go way back, we have been placed in jeopardy even from Dr. King. He was fighting for the garbage collectors. And then in North Carolina, all of the different things, everybody is folks laid their bodies down in the street. So we don't have the room to be fighting among ourselves and with each other, but we need to fight for one another and to love and to support one another. And today, this is what Dr. Keys is here to do, to tell you all to love, hug. And I know they said the pandemic stuff is there, but you know, the love of God is shed abroad for all of us to embrace and to be there for one another. And I say to you all today, hugs, love, and kisses from Dr. Keys, because I do love you guys very much. You are my family.
Thank you, Dr. Keys. Would you mind sharing what led up to the organizing of the conference? What were you setting up to accomplish? I know Aaron was there as well. So yeah, if either of you have insight into what led up to organizing the conference and what you were aiming to accomplish.
Well, one thing, we had to take it to the streets. We had been in the streets fighting. You know, during the civil rights movement, they did a lot of, you know, organizing and hit the streets and stuff to highlight a lot of these issues. And we did a lot of that. And so we realized that some of us was in isolation at different points, and that's how I moved, come to Columbia, Mississippi, and found Dr. Keys and a handful of folk working, fighting, struggling, and of course, let's go here. Let's not be remiss to say that environmental racism is real, and that we had a lot of break-ins and different things to happen, and a lot of our folks getting run down, run off the road, and different things that happen. So you had to look at the good old boy network system that was established against, let me go here, all people of color communities pretty much in the low income Caucasian, because in my community it was like 70% African American and 30% poor white. But all in all, everybody was suffering. And so DAMU helped to pull together the summit. It was a leadership team of all of the Dion, Bernice, Peggy, Beverly, Bob, and Ben Chavis, Charles Lee, a whole bunch of folks. Everybody. I don't want to just leave out Florida. A whole lot of folks was involved with the Richard Moore, Tom Go-To. A whole lot of folks came together to help to pull the People of Color Summit together and to establish our principles so that these folks that was in these key positions, I call them the good old boy network, and you see about a handful of them, the rich ones running the whole globe, pretty much, you're asking me, because we got a chance to travel into Africa and China and places, and in Mexico, we saw the same thing. It was nothing different. It really wasn't. So I'm saying to all of us, we don't have time to fight each other, but we have time to love and help and to support one another. And I know they was trying to pit at one point, one against the other, because the government started giving out the little grants and what have you, and they wanted to see who was going to fight who. And some of the grassroots folks, I'm just being honest, was kind of upset because the academians was getting the funds, and really they needed the funds to help us. Because let me tell you this, at one point they would not listen to grassroots folks, so they thought everybody was ignorant and unlearned, which was not true, because I was never ignorant and unlearned when it came to fighting for environmental justice for our community. And so what we try to do is establish a protocol as well to try to work on some accomplishments. We had the problems identified and we looked for solutions. So in order to really do effective solutions, people had to come together through partnership, collaboration, syndication, whatever way you want to put it. We had to come together. It was a must, because otherwise they'd have picked off each community and many folks would have died tremendously so without seeing any victory along the way. So it's been a lot of, sweat, tears, pain, death, all sorts of stuff have gone into this movement. And a lot of our people, even now, dealing with different things. So let us just keep one another in prayer and lift it up with a spirit of love and kindness.
Amen. I want to add, and one of the things I want to add, this is Brother Aaron on the other end. I just joined a little while ago. So I'm listening to you, enjoying the love and going on the mental rollback. But the other piece that was critical to organizing, and as the sister mentioned, was moving us from incidents and isolation and analysis of the toxins. And so this was putting faces behind the dots and moving from just, as Sister Keys pointed out, just lifting up little issues here and there, but saying that this was systemic and putting the bodies to the dots that were identified by Brother Charles Lee and Dr. Benjamin Chavis. I mean, the report was revolutionary because Charles at that time was a graduate student, so was Bernice Miller Travis. And, this was really groundbreaking, but the key piece of the revolution was moving people from just their particular molehill to making it a big mountain that all of us are all in this together. And this was one of the critical revolutionary pieces. And what Damu, because at that time, was Damu still at Greenpeace at that time, Charles? Do you remember?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yes, he was.
Because we were concerned that Greenpeace was trying to, again, use them as a token, but we worked with what we had because there was also a lot of strategy. Where green groups trying to use the movement, but wasn't even a movement yet, but tried to use that was what was forming for their power, and but still did not make and respect Damu enough to give him the portfolio that he needed. So they kept him at a low level management worker level or organizer. That's what he was. They had him as an organizer. And part of that fight was the early fight of having people of color in the main green groups. Damu was also the shot fired across the barrel of these green groups that were just tokenizing us and trying to pimp what was the latest thing to come along.
He did. He stood up. Brother Aaron, I want to say to you, thank God for you too, because the other thing is we talked about the Big Ten groups, and I would say this, that at one point, the Big Ten would not allow any of our people to be directors and none of that stuff in these different organizations. And now you look around, our folks is rising. So I'm giving God honor, glory, and praises for what he has done and continue to do for us. But I want the young people to know we must fight on, because I'm just going to be honest. Don't think that it's over, because you're still a ways from this particular situation being over, because until we can see green, clean, healthy, safe, and sustainable communities for all, we're gonna have to continue to fight. And that's just the bottom line.
Dr. Keys, can I ask you a question? This is Cheryl Johnson. Love you, my sister.
Yes, sure.
Yes. After you guys got the 17 EJ principles adopted, then the delegated of folks went to the White House and presented to the White House during the summit?
Yes. Yes, for the executive
so
order.
That's how the whole executive order came into play, right?
Yes.
The executive order 12898.
Yes, ma'am. That's how it came
okay.
into play.
Okay. Because that's a critical, I think that's a critical piece that be left out sometime when people are talking about it, is that those 17 principles, delegated folks went to the White House and presented it to the White House.
That's true.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl, sweetie, for bringing that up. It's just so many different components and things that have happened, in our history. Actually, books need to be books, not a book, because I'm gonna tell you something. When I started out too with the Superfund site in Columbia, that was a hot mess. And so we had Barbara Unwine and Dion Ferris and Ruby Sherrod and different ones there. They had to really win the $50,000 technical assistance grant for Carolyn Dale to be my technical advisor. For her to interpret that data and stuff that the Ryco chemical plant had messed up, and we found out through research, Ryco had 31 other listed sites, Fort Valley, Georgia. Marvin Kraft, I believe it is. Marvin. I think he was a representative over there in Fort Valley. But we was able to even plug those things. It's just amazing to me, all of the different things that has taken place from history. And I know at some point I get a chance to write a book. I just write books. Let me just go here. Because one of the things I do want to do for us is from the faith-based approach with Jesus People Against Pollution. I know it was God that raised me up because I was working in that courthouse. I didn't even have my mind on anything of the sort of thinking that we was living in a contaminated community where the land, air, and water was fully polluted by this chemical company. I didn't even have no idea. But that is the raising up of what God will do but he wants his children's eyes to become open to the knowledge of truth. And so all of our eyes, all of us that's on here, our eyes are wide open. So what we need to do is not close our eyes and ears to this and continue to fight together. Together we stand, and divided we fall. Let's not fight one another, but let's fight for one another. That's what makes this movement so important to me. That's why I love every one of you with the love of Jesus. Some say, don't say Jesus, but that's who I worship. So I love it. I really do. I love God. I love you. I want you to know that. From the bottom of my heart. And sincerely. And everybody that knows Dr. Keys knows I show it. I don't just talk the talk, but I do my best to walk the walk.
Speaking of walking the walk, the summit was where the EJ principles were adopted. How easy was it to come up with all those principles and get to agreement on that? And B, have you seen frustration or reactions of how you've seen the movement continue in practicing the EJ principles?
To some level of degree, it was always the tension here and there because grassroots folks is something sometimes we are, I'll be honest, because we say, the technical ones or collegiate ones would always seemingly to be at the top. And those that's on the ground floor, not saying that those on the ground floor were not educated, because many of us was. It's just that we was not working in institutions or agencies, law offices, and in the engineer field and what have you. But we had to come together. Yeah, it was tension. But somehow, through the grace and mercy of God, He blessed us to put a lot of stuff behind us and collaborate and become one, cohesively work together. So that's what I love. And I'm telling you, it was a lot of crying at different points. People cried, people laughed. We laughed, we cried, we did it all. We did it all. That's the thing I love about the movement, because it was real, a real movement. And the real movement have all those.
Well, Danielle is to the point. She's saying what she said. There was a lot of passion. It was not something that was just written fast. It was a lot of words. It was when she talks about the crying and tears. She knows her brother here. A lot of folks, like I said, there were some egos at the early piece, and still some egos now. But the thing is the sister is very graceful is that she covers the faults of a lot of her brothers and sisters. But this was not an easy set of points that everybody had consent. Some wanted stronger. Sister Connie, God rest her soul, was very passionate about what had to be there. But at the end of the day, we rose at principles that everybody rallied around. It was what a true village in the African and tribal sense of us coming to consensus, but people were heard, and yes, there was a lot of passion.
From a lot of that passion, how many different issues were you trying to tackle? Like, were you working on land use issues? And
well, it was cathartic. I think my sister Keys will know that it's cathartic, because remember, this is a first time gathering of people from all across the country, and this represents hundreds of years of neglect in public policy, rulemaking, all these things. I mean, everything, we were intersectional before people came at the term intersectional. And this floor was the lancing of that boil. So a lot of stuff came out on the floor. So it wasn't as if somebody sat up there with a chart and this is what you work through. No, that's you modern younger folks. Y'all have the luxury of doing it. But we were there when it was just a hot mess. And we had to work through these topics and come up with these core principles. It was not, as people, nowadays, like I said, they do it. But the point is that the sense the metal was hammered by everybody to the point that we got that consensus. And I think Sister Keys, and lifting up the spirit and the spirit that was working on it, I think captures the essence of how these EJ principles were forged.
And we definitely was passionate. But I want you to know this, I would say this, if you jumped on one community, the whole movement was coming at you. The whole movement, trust me. We may have our differences in opinion, but I guarantee you right now, if you call one, they coming to your rescue. So that's what, to me, was so important. I remember walking the streets in Columbia, and I remember a statement made by the leaders. We even had Congressman John Conyers in Columbia, Mississippi, believe it or not. He walked the streets with us. We had a march and rally. And we was at the courthouse square because that's where I was working at the time. But they said if they told them white boys, they said, if one hair of our sisters had one string of hair is messed up or something happened, we coming at you guys. That's what they told us. And so for me, that even gave me more boldness. I'm being real honest. You need that backing and support, and know that you're not working in isolation, not by yourself.
Definitely.
Any more questions?
A few more. Can you describe the atmosphere of the summit? What was it like being around a lot of that many like-minded people for the first time?
Well, it was a lot of support, most part. Of course, you always have different ones with different little attitudes, because they didn't get a chance to go to the White House, to the signing of the executive order, what have you. But nevertheless, again, we sucked it up and we stayed together as one. And to me, that's what's essential. And that's what we want to teach you young ones, to do the same. Can you hear me?
Yes, sorry.
No,
Last
yeah.
question
You know
before
I'm driving, so I'm trying to make sure that this phone doesn't go out.
Sorry about that. Last question, then I'll open it up to the audience for questions. You mentioned some of the outcomes from the summit, and I have a slide of 3 slides of the EJ principles as well. Were there any additional outcomes from the summit other than EJ principles and the executive order 12898?
Probably some of the young ones have not seen it, but it'd be good for them to see it. And also to keep a copy of that, in your file. Keep those executive order and the environmental justice, MES principles, climate justice principles, whatever we have, it is needful working on the ground floor of any of these issues that we're dealing with at the grassroots level. You need those. That show you got some solidarity, and it also shows you got that major support back that is needed.
Definitely. And this time I will go through the slides and show them on the screen of the 17 principles.
I think every one of the young ones that do not have that need to keep those, because again, blood, sweat, and tears going into those principles. That executive order a lot. Mm-hmm. And we have lost several of our loved ones, and so we don't want to ever forget them. Because if it wasn't for them helping to pave this way, where will we be?
Definitely. Cheryl, you have your hand raised? Oh, you're on mute.
I just got a comment, basically. I've been involved in the back scene of this whole movement. And one of the things that I want this audience to understand is that the United States Environmental Protection Agency didn't have no mandate to work with community. Because of these principles and because of these leadership, they was able to beat on the United States Environmental Protection Agency, open up these opportunities for grant and technical assistance, because they was only mandated to regulate industry and work with academic institutions, but they had no jurisdiction to work with community impacted by industries in their neighborhood, or to even get any information from US EPA about industries in our community. So this was some real hard work. These were some real fighters that fought for the opportunity that exists today under US EPA, that we didn't have that opportunity. Because I think US EPA only been around since 1969. 1969 when they was first erected, but they never had any mandate to work with community and community issues or community impacts from industries in their neighborhoods. So the work that these leaders have done, they really opened up the doors of opportunity. They created because of the executive order, these principles led to this signing of this, the development of the executive order 12898 by Clinton, and it gave opportunity for community to get resources to be able to understand and have the right to know about what's going on in our neighborhoods. So I commend you, Dr. Keys, and all the other folks who really, really fought and got this opportunity open, but that's just one aspect. There's still a whole lot of opportunity that we have a right to have access to that we don't have access to. So thank you.
That's true. Welcome. Thank you, Cheryl. Because I tell you, and I wish others that is on the line, maybe some of our elders that's on the line that help to pave the way, can contribute to some of the history. Because I think that we don't ever want to miss an opportunity for training and developing youth leadership. They need this to be deposited into their spirits as well. So we got a lot of grooming that has to be done, because we want them to know that nobody is going to hand you anything. Whatever you get, you're gonna have to take it. And what I learned, and I'm just telling you from a faith-based perspective, there was a scripture for me that said the kingdom suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. So whatever the enemy has stolen from us, we got to get it back with interest. And with the executive order 12898, they didn't even have any money put to it. It was just the executive order written, a written document from the president's desk. So they did not have any finances plugged into it. But a lot of work from the principals being hammered and pushing through many, let's go here, danger of things seen and unseen. Because back then, folks would really attack you and your family or whatever. It would come after. But thanks be unto God, He has kept us to this point. The young people stick together and let us all, the old ones have been doing their level best to stay together and stick together. And we call one another from time to time, even when we can't see each other during this pandemic, but y'all know, the old ones do, that the love and the support is there, always there. Pray that the younger generation know that all of their hard work and effort go to waste.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Dr. Keys or for any of our movement elders here?
Yeah, I have a question. So this is Huda Alka with Wisconsin Green Muslims, and we are organizing a press conference to honor this occasion and then also highlight the Wisconsinites that participated. So there are 6. that I found out that participated in this event. And I was wondering, like how was this, how did you get, or how the organizers got from each state? That was like amazing to get representation from all 50 states and international. So how was that outreach? And telling you, the representatives from Wisconsin, there are 3 of them from the tribes, indigenous tribes. So that was wow. And then the geographic representation in Wisconsin was also amazing. Like we had from all over the state, like distribution wise, geographically. So I was wondering, how did that happen?
Well, a lot of the organizing was collectively done, but you had some that had some of the Big Ten groups and different ones had funding, private and public funding. I'm sure mainly private. They would set up to use funds for community organizers, and so with that, it was it allowed different ones to reach out all over. You had things divided up from different of the Big Ten. They put resources in it, but at the same time, mainly a lot of our people had to do a lot of membership things, work it, and pull the resources together. Do the best we could for the organizing of these activities. But what I love too is the centralized location of where many of us always try to head to, was at the capital level, DC. And we did a lot of that. And then when it was time to shift, move stuff in the regions, we did that too. And then on the ground in various states and communities, we did it together. But it's a togetherness that has helped build this movement and made it what it is through diversity, multicultural diversity. That's what has happened. But everybody put some skin in the game to get us to this point. And there was, to me, no big eyes and little U's. Everybody was working hard. And even those, I'm sure, in the institution probably went through more hell than folks realized, because those universities and things they want to change and even have any resource centers. I think Bob was at Clark, Atlanta, and they had some struggles there and left from there and went to Texas. So it just, people just had to battle. You just have to do what you have to do, and that's what's happening. But whatever we can do to make things better for you guys, the younger ones, we want to do that. But you have prayerfully a list, and you have we act that keeps up with a lot of everybody, pretty much. I just think about Cecil, and I can see him there chewing and eating food. He and I love food. We talk about that a great deal, and we just, all just pulled together resources and all. We ate together, slept together, did a whole bunch of stuff. And I remember we also, when we did organizing, we didn't have enough resources, for a lot of the hotel rooms. They would stick 3 and 4 in the room together. But we was all sisters and brothers, so we made it through. But the Big Ten had all of the money. They had that money. And we found ways of getting some of the resources out to them. But now I think there's a collective thing that is going on now, and some doors have come open. So it makes people now want to put in a little bit more. But whatever we can do to help the younger generation out, as you are organizing summits and whatever, look for your old people in the movement. I don't care if you can find 1 or 2 or 3, whatever, in whatever location you're in. Look for the old heads in the movement. They can help you. You won't have to reinvent the wheel on a lot of things. So that's what I encourage you all. And I'm here. And for all of you that need to access me, I'm on the computer. We act and everybody else probably have it. And I do run this cell phone. I got 2 of them now. I have to keep up with it because the church is running me pretty hard as well. And also, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up Dr. Jean Sundown that brought together as well the national Earn Devil and Ben Chavis and a bunch of Dr. Ben Chavis. A lot of them did the Black Church Summit, and I was the grassroots speaker for us with Al Gore coming to the forefront. He never showed up in our communities, I can tell you that. He committed to coming, but he never showed up. So these are the kind of promises and commitments that you'll get from the politicians. They will say they're going to do one thing and they do something else. But don't hang your head on everything that they say they're going to do. We just be ready to organize, push, and make it happen. Because sometimes you're going to have to push them, even out of their little comfort zone. Because they are so used to being around the resources and stuff. And, your community to them is nothing. Don't feel bad.
Did you have your hand raised?
Huh?
I think Cheryl had her hand raised earlier. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm done.
All right. Dr. Keys, thank you so much. We have about 3 minutes left before we switch gears. Do you have any closing remarks?
Nothing. I just want everyone to know that we must keep the love flowing and the support. Be more loving, more caring, more time to one another. Because the only way you're going to get anything is to work together with a spirit of oneness. And I know sometimes people may get on your nerves, but you have differences in opinion. So just because you have a difference in opinion, it does not give me the right to badger you or to beat you up, beat you down. And in our movement, some of us have done certain things, but we wasn't proud of. But let me just say this. Let us, from this day forward, go forward with full force, loving, caring, helping, and supporting one another in every possible way that you can, as much as lies within you to do so, do it. Because you don't know. People are here today and gone today. So I love you all with the love of God. And y'all be blessed.
Thank you, Dr. Keys, for all your insight. Definitely. We're a few minutes early, but I will switch gears now. So we've learned a lot about the history of the summit in 1991, but now here we are 30 years later. And we wanted to hear from some folks that are currently in the environmental justice movement locally on the ground. So I will share my screen to introduce those folks. Yeah, so first we have Beto Lugo-Martinez from Clean Air Now, based in Kansas City. Alexia, based in, working with Poder in Austin, Texas. Richelle Lee with Environmental Justice Network, based in Camden, New Jersey. And then Dr. Robert Bullard from Texas Southern University. Dr. Bullard's having some issues logging on, so I will turn it over to Beto, Alexia, and Richelle to introduce themselves in the meantime.
Yeah, hi, I'm Beto. I'm with an organization called Clean Air Now in Kansas City. I'm an environmental justice organizer. I'm the executive director of the organization. So that's my introduction for now, and I'll pass it to Alexia.
Hi, everyone. My name's Alexia. I'm in Austin, Texas, and I'm with Poder, and I'm an organizer, and I've been with them since 2019.
Hello, everybody. I'm Richelle Lee. I am a board member of the Energy Justice Network. I am also part of the New Jersey State NAACP Environmental and Climate Justice Committee, as well as a senior fellow with the Environmental Leadership Program.
I wanted to start off with, how did you all become involved in the environmental justice space?
I guess I can go. So yeah, so the work that I do really is at the, the passion that drives my work really is growing up at the fence line of a petrochemical facility that formulated DDT and agrochemicals, pesticides, right in my low-income neighborhood. This didn't immediately drive my work because I was growing up, I was still in high school. However, as I looked back, as I got a little bit older, I said, well, wait a minute, there's a big disconnection here of, how communities that are more affluent don't have these kinds of facilities adjacent to their home, 50 feet away from a facility where I would breathe the chemicals day in, day out. But also one thing to remember is that it didn't just happen by accident that we ended up there. We also got to remember that systemic racism exists all across this country. And the reason I say that is that my parents were, farm workers, and this was their opportunity to have their first home, right? And we know through, I learned that through the USDA and the federal government and these systemic racist practices, they intentionally put communities of color, people of color next to these facilities. So the opportunity that my parents had in front of them was to be a first home-time owner through this federal funding project, right? Through HUD and all that with a local nonprofit in the area. So, I guess growing up, my parents, just like every family, right? You want the best thing for your family, your children. My parents thinking, well, this is a good opportunity to be a first-time homeowner. So they applied and they were accepted, not knowing the dangers and the exposure that we were being, the dangers that we were going to be exposed to moving forward for until now, because my parents still live in that home, right? So, this I understood was a problem. And that really is what drives the work that I do, because even in my community, as this facility kept polluting and dumping chemicals in the air and people dying of cancer in the neighborhood, we knew something was wrong, but there wasn't enough willpower in the area yet to mobilize, right? So the mobilization didn't happen from anyone until really, in my own neighborhood, standing up to this facility and saying, wait a minute, there's something wrong. And I think that continues to be the fight to this day. Once the facility shut down after numerous violations and fires and spills and accidents and whatever, never once did they care about public health. It had always been about the industry and how they're protected, right, through the violation. How do you clean it up without, making sure that they still stay in business and operating? And so that right there, when the facility shut down in 2000, there was a big disconnect, because this was, just the agency, the EPA, for example, speaking with the polluter, which was Chevron. It's Chevron owned. And so there was it was really difficult to engage with the polluter and the agencies at the time, and how to make sure that community voices were centered in what's next with this facility. Because, it shut down in 2000. In 2013 was the first time we were able to push through the EPA and the racist Department of Toxic Substance Control in California to meet with EPA representatives about that issue. And now it's 2021. And now that the EPA said, well, we're going to decide to do a cleanup, but not to residential standards, because we want residential standards because we're in close proximity to that Superfund site. Now we're moving into another phase, because now we're doing a house research study, because a lot of our community members, neighbors, families, kids that I grew up with, their parents have died, passed away because of a direct link to DDT. And we know that the research is there, right? That there's a direct link, or that the research is showing that it could skip generations in the womb, and maybe the kid has it, maybe the next generation doesn't have it. So these are things that really, they're not wins. For me, this is still a big fight that I think I'm going to fight. I don't know for how long, but this is the fight that keeps me going, that knowing that where I grew up, I was intentionally poisoned and put there by these systemic racist policies and practices, right? And so that is what drives me. I can talk a little bit more of other wins that have happened in my community and other communities also across the country. But I think that right there always takes me back to saying, well, we can have this win here, this win there, but you know what? Deep in my heart, that right there is personal, And that is what I'm going to fight. And no matter what, whether we, you know, it's just something you just got to keep doing. And I think that's where we really are. The environmental justice movement is about the people and the health of our people and our neighbors, people of color, and all of us, making sure that we have an opportunity to thrive. Because a lot of our community members in that neighborhood also, you know, we're born without an opportunity sometimes, and we try to thrive. But when you talk about equity, not everyone's giving that same opportunity since the beginning. So I'll stop there and I'll pass it to someone else. Alexia, maybe.
I can go next and introduce myself. So my name's Alexia, and so I, you know, growing up saw some of the effects of, you know, the climate crisis, pollution, and all of that. And at the same time, I was also involved in high school and in college in other social justice movements like immigration rights. And then in 2019, I actually found Poder, which is a grassroots environmental justice organization in Austin, where I'm from. And through their Young Scholars for Justice program, I really learned about the EJ movement and, you know, environmental racism and the history in Austin, and like so many things that I didn't even know about Austin, despite, you know, growing up there, kind of like the policy, the racism, and all of that. And that, you know, just like really inspired me to keep going in the space. And so I've been working with Poder since then, and it's been an honor to be part of the environmental justice movement.
Next, Richelle.
Hello, everyone. Well, I am much like those who had spoke before me, and it became a personal fight for me when I was asked to join Camden for Clean Air to fight Covanta's age-old incinerator. And for me, it was personal because my mother, who literally worked a stone throw away from that incinerator, and I used to run around the halls of the school that she worked in, and I watched it affect so many people. And for me and her as well, having, you know, her bouts with cancer and then me having lupus, it was a lot to take in, to find out that an incinerator could have that much power over your life if you don't even know about it or even care to know about it. So for me, it was personal, and I enjoyed working with people like Ben Sirocco and Marcus Sibley with the state ECJ. And it's just been amazing seeing how many people in the fight are getting into it and being intentional about it and trying to make that change.
Great. And then last but not least, Dr. Bullard, would you mind introducing yourselves and sharing with us how you became involved in the environmental justice space?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I was kind of drafted, reluctant, accidental environmentalist, and my wife, who was a lawyer, way back in 1979, long before most of you were born, I was asked to collect data and do a study for a lawsuit that she had filed, Bean versus Southwestern Waste Management Corporation. First lawsuit challenging environmental racism using civil rights law. And I had 10 students in my research methods class at Texas Southern University, a historically Black university located here in Houston. And I designed the study, did the study, and support a lawsuit challenging systemic racism in the 4th largest city in the country. And that's how I got involved. And the research opened my eyes, and we did the study. We got no support from environmental groups. We got no support from civil rights groups. One of the largest and oldest, I won't call any names, but we all know the initials way back then. But you know, things have changed a bit, but still, you know, the issues of the underlying conditions with all of the citing, enforcement, unequal protection, and dumping on poor people and people of color, the underlying conditions in every case is structural and systemic racism, period.
Definitely. Would you mind just giving us some insight on the issues that you currently work on? And can you share with us a recent local community win or a recent success? We can start with Richelle.
Okay, well, with us, we just recently were able to get the powers to be to decide to not actually power up that microgrid that they proposed with the incinerator. So that's also very exciting for us because we don't want them to use dirty things to power good things. So that was something we just recently celebrated, as well as preparing to launch our Black Energy Justice Network for youth and getting them more involved and letting them see people that look like them and sound like them in the fight, and learning from their elders and from people that are close to their age and from each other to push forward and get this done.
Alexia, would you mind sharing?
Yes, so we're constantly working on land use, especially zoning, which, you know, allows environmental racism, but is also causing gentrification and displacement here in Austin. And we're working on protecting the eastern side of the Colorado River, which is alongside low-income communities and has largely been neglected until now, when a lot of new industries like Tesla are moving in. And then we are also working on various social justice issues like just transportation, with a new rail being built in Austin that's going to be $7 and not affordable. And then also constantly providing resources, since we're still in the middle of a pandemic and communities are still suffering.
Dr. Bullard, would you mind sharing?
Well, I think for me right now, the biggest win in October 2021 is what we've been able to get the environmental justice, climate justice, and racial justice lens to be applied from the local all the way up to the national level, and to fight to get that lens not just in the application, but also in the outcomes when it relates to who gets resources and who gets left behind. And I think the Justice 40, getting that equity and racial justice lens into the current administration, and to get that target number, it says 40%, but also getting the metrics so that we can measure where the money goes, and if it doesn't go there, then there are mechanisms to trigger resources that can fight to get the equity lens and the equity outcomes. Millions of dollars now being forced toward those implementation of that kind of equity outcomes. And to me, that's a victory, you know, to have millions of dollars now arrayed to try to force the money, resources, investments to go where it should.
We'll dive more into that soon. And Beto.
Yeah, so, you know, I think a local win here, really a grassroots effort is, you know, our organization. I'm in Kansas City now, leading an organization here that started at the neighborhood level, community members concerned about pollution from the rail yard, a fence line to the rail yard, right, in industrial facilities and warehouses, just like a lot of communities of color across the country. And through COVID, we decided, you know, we were just doing some really grassroots, you know, we were just doing some air monitoring and the community, because we know that enforcement is something that we always, you know, that's something that does not happen anywhere, right? And so we need to find out what's happening for ourselves. But through COVID, even through the enforcement discretion and people dying and all that, you know, we in the community, we put together a small neighborhood air monitoring network, really guided by community members' concerns about the environmental health inequities, right, that exist there. And I can tell you through this process, which was very, very novel in this part of the country. I know a lot of our EJ members have done their own monitoring around pollution sources in different states. But here's a very conservative part of the country, right? Kansas and Missouri model for redlining, so very conservative governments. And so it's really hard to push against them. But I can tell you through this grassroots effort last year, we deployed this small scale air monitoring, and the local government actually wanted us to participate in a land use general plan, which to us is why we do this type of work, right? How do we use it? We can't just go with our stories, then we got to find our own data, because sometimes the academics aren't willing to work with us yet, because like I said, it's so conservative here, there. They're very careful who they work with, who do they approach, and if they're even talking EJ. So I can tell you that's a big win, because this is exactly the kind of movements we want to see in every community that can, we can't say that we're changing the whole land use and general plan, but we can say that we were influential in them looking at beyond the economic prosperity, beyond more industry, beyond more jobs, really looking at the core issues of these communities that is bordered by industrial pollution. So I consider that a win for our community. People were very excited, and then we're still mobilizing around that. And then earlier this year, we had a campaign around shutting down a coal plant, and we were successful until last month, when the utilities came back and said, well, wait a minute, we're not going to shut it down after all. We want to do natural gas. We want to go from a coal plant to a natural gas. And we know natural gas is another pollution source, so we're not down with that. We want to make sure that it's shut down, and we are dependent on clean energy, right, in these same communities. I'll stop there.
Thank you. You all thus far have mentioned a lot of challenges in fighting for environmental justice. What are some of the challenges that you've run into, or more recently? Yeah, could you highlight some of those challenges? We can go in reverse order and start with Beto.
Okay, I'll keep it short. Just so someone else. Yeah, I think some of the challenges, is I think still some of the challenges we see is the government still. We got local agencies, very influential by industry, very influential by the powers that exist here. And I think that's still a problem, because, a lot of what's been happening in the last year or so through COVID and Floyd and all this, a lot of agencies have really put themselves put this EJ lens and environmental justice lens on everything they do, but it's not a practice, right? It's just something to make sure they're fitting in with the rest of what's going on, right? And so we feel that approach is not a good approach, because, it's still putting our communities of color in a very dangerous place, because they do not care about our communities. And I think the biggest challenge is pushing through those agencies that have funneled all the wealth to certain communities, specifically here. I'm speaking in Kansas City, where there's an MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization, that oversees two sides of the state line. Other elected boards are city council members. So we know there's a problem there already, because we know where the wealth's going to make it. So that right there is a real challenge. But we're finding ways to break through that, to make sure that we push through that however we can. I mean, through the EJ movement, we have all this knowledge that exists here, that we know how to do this, and that's the beauty of the EJ movement, that, we all learn from each other, and we figure out how are we going to push through this. We have to topple down that government. We're going to do it. That's one of our missions right now, to topple it. So.
Definitely. Dr. Bullard, would you mind sharing some of the challenges that you've run into in the EJ space?
Well, the challenges are the same. They're structural. And I think it's important that we understand that the same forces that drive pollution and poison and disinvestment to our communities are the same forces that drive the voter suppression, the dismantling of democracy and participation. So we don't have the luxury of just working on environmental issues. We have to work on health and transportation and food and water security and those other issues. So the major challenge is to find adequate resources to get to our organizations and our institutions to meet those challenges. And I think we have to be creative, innovative, and fearless. And so I think we have to turn those challenges into opportunities. And for example, the fact I live in Houston, Texas, in the Gulf Coast, and the fact that in the South is where almost 90% of our HBCUs are located, Black Colleges and Universities located. Our schools are located on the front line of all of the impacts of, you name it, environmental, climate, economic disinvestment, et cetera. And so having those institutions and having the communities, we have to turn that environmental challenge into an opportunity of us coming together. And so we created this HBCU CBO Gulf Coast Equity Consortium, 43 schools in 5 states that we are going for, changing the whole dynamics in terms of the power dynamics when it comes to voting and access to economics, from the small things like a grocery store or a park or a green space, to all the way up in terms of how monies get allocated when it comes to our county commissioners and our city council. After Hurricane Harvey, there are a number of us that organized like 3 dozen organizations that never talk to each other: white groups, Latino groups, Black groups, environmental, faith-based, civic, etc. Because of this biblical flood, we had to come together, and we created this coalition. And we went to the county and said, "Okay, county, Harris County, you've always done things where money follows money, money follows power, money follows whites when it comes to these disasters." And we said we have to flip the script. We changed that dynamics in the 2018 midterm elections when the county commissioners flipped to majority Democrats. And the first thing that our coalition did was to say we need to implement an equity lens that looks at money coming down and money being spent on flood mitigation, on disaster mitigation, and all of the money that's dealing with the county. Now that is to be tested, because now we have Democrats in charge, and so we have to hold them accountable and make sure that they make the right decisions. But after the disaster, I think we can make good kinds of decisions, but we have to plan before disasters hit so that we anticipate that there's going to be unfairness, because racism is stamped into America's DNA. And we have to assume that what's coming out the chute is not going to be fair, and we have to fight like hell every day, 24/7, to make the system itself that we are in and try to flip it so that equity and justice becomes the dominant paradigm as opposed to a footnote. Now that's hard to do, but it is possible for us to do if we have intergenerational mobilization and if we have people who can see that systems approach that need to be taken. I'm encouraged.
Thank you. Alexia, do you have anything to add?
Well, I definitely agree with everything that's already been said. And I think also in Austin, it's really interesting because before I was born in the 90s, the elders of Poder, like Susana Almanza, Sylvia Herrera, kicked out a lot of the major, polluting industries. And while, East Austin is still impacted, obviously, by pollution, it's a lot more clean than it was, which means that everyone's coming in and it's kind of like a land grab. And it's so interesting the way it's working out, but it's terrible, and it's still related to that environmental justice fight. And it's scary how many, liberal politician or Democrat politician go out and, say that they support equity, say that they support people of color, say that they support environmental justice. But then when it comes to taking action and voting, that's not what their votes say. And so I think understanding how government works, how these systems work, and really addressing the root cause is really important in order, to actually, have land back and have all these things, so that one issue doesn't just keep coming after the next and history doesn't just keep repeating itself.
Richelle, do you want to add anything? And then Beto, I know you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, that was excellent.
Again, I agree 100% of what everybody has been saying. And I would like to add to that, one of the things that we have to deal with that Dr. Keys actually spoke to was the infighting. We don't always get along, and we're not going to always get along, but we are in the same fight together. And I think if we can get to that place that we understand that and we respect that, then we can get a lot farther. And, for us to be sitting here and going back and forth where one person wants to get farther than the other, and then we become crabs in a barrel, and it just becomes a headache. And we already are fighting those social determinants of health, because that's something that's important, right? We need to discuss education. We need to discuss environmental issues. We need to discuss all these different things. but we're not getting to a place we can come together to discuss them and fight them together and then win them together. So, that's one of the things that I know that we've definitely fought up against is our own infighting with our own people. So, if we can try to get it together and come together and do this fight, we can win.
Definitely. Next question, definitely will dive deeper into this. Environmental justice has become a popular buzzword in the past few years. How has that affected your work? Do you have any successes or pitfalls to share? We can start with Dr. Bullard.
Oh, I have lots of success stories to share, and a lot of them are in some of the 18 books that I've written, and hopefully you've read some of them. But there's still a lot of challenges, and there's still a lot of horror stories. But I do think that this has been my theory of change over these last 4 decades, is that let's not dwell on what we don't have. Let's dwell on what we have and how we can get much more of our collective work moving forward. If we look at the paradigm that is now, in terms of the whole idea that racial justice lens is now being seen as acceptable. Now, it's more than just putting a racial justice statement on a website, my green brothers and sisters. But it means that acknowledging the fact that racism is a major driver of a lot of these vulnerabilities and these inequities, and there will not be any environmental, climate, economic, energy, food and water justice without dismantling systemic racism. And if we are in one accord, that it's just one movement, whether you're working on transportation and trying to get the money from the MPO, or whether you're working in terms of trying to get block grant monies for housing, et cetera, that we have to understand that people of color in this country, indigenous people, have to have a lens that somehow can drive that work and not assume that the outcome will be fair. We always ask, will the government response to climate change be fair? And we wrote a book on that, looking at 8 decades of government response to disasters. It's called The Wrong Complexion for Protection. 8 decades, Great Mississippi Flood of 1927, all the way up to the BP spill. Every disaster that's happened, government has not responded in a fair way. So let's take our framework and our work to say that no matter what you work on, housing, transportation, energy, parks, health, whatever, that your justice lens has to be dealing with that structural inequality and systemic racism. And if you take the systems approach, I think we'll have more in common than not.
Alexia, would you like to go next?
Yes, I can speak a little bit. I think, especially like 2020, 2021, like equity has really become a buzzword, and like there's a lot more attention around climate justice and environmental justice. And I think on one hand, there's a lot of, youth and a lot of people getting involved, which is very necessary. And, a lot more people aware of environmental injustice, of environmental racism. But I think it's also important that we don't let corporations especially kind of co-opt these words. Hearing from like the largest polluters or the largest plastic polluters saying that they support environmental justice is very ironic. And I think there's a lot of greenwashing that's going on as well that we need to be, paying attention to. And then like false solution like carbon and capture and all of that we know won't actually make a difference, are also being promoted in the lens of like equity and climate and, addressing climate change and all of that. So I think it's important that, we learn from the history, we learn from the EJ elders, and we really understand what EJ is and what EJ is not.
Definitely. Beto and then Richelle.
Yeah, so, I think, I echo what Alexia said about the false solutions, right, and climate change. We know that cap and trade and, all these offsets programs, just shift pollution, right, from one community to another. But I think I want to add a little more also to some of the EJ work that's happening, and what Dr. Bullard and Alexia mentioned is that, people are using this word now, I think also for funding mechanisms when they traditionally haven't been part of the EJ work, and not it being intentional, really having our back, right, in the movement. Really, they say that they're in solidarity, but through their actions, they're showing very different. And I can give you an example of what I mean is that, there's a organization in the area, and I'm sure this happens a lot across the country, but being very extractive in the way that now that they see that EJ and that the work that we're doing as an organization is so important, they wanted to hire someone to work directly in our community where we've been doing climate justice work, EJ work, and now they want to hire someone to come into that community. It's a white-led group to say, well, we want to put a Latino outreach coordinator in that community so they can capture stories of the community. Well, our community members have said, well, we're not a fairy tale, right? We're not going to be here just sharing our story just for the sake of just sharing to anyone. So that's where I see that, it's very extractive because people are coming out of the woodworks claiming their environmental justice now because they see that EJ grants and all these opportunities. We can still not even apply to an EJ grant because we're so small, but yet these other groups can apply and they're using that EJ land. So that is a problem. And I think we're going to see it a lot more, especially with like the Justice 40 money. A lot of people are coming out like, well, we're the EJ groups. We've been doing this because we know so-and-so. People have tried to put us as partners in their grants after the fact. I'm like, wait a minute, no. We never talked about this. I checked with the funder and they're like, if you're a partner, that means you're doing a specific job, there's a specific objective for that grant. You need to disclose it and all that. We never knew, but I check in, I go, how did this work? And I say, you know what, we're not going to sign on to this agenda. And it's hard because we also want to continue to create a pathway to get them there to learn so they can know where we're coming from, because this is not something that we just woke up when they say, hey, we know how to do this. We know the issues. A lot of us were born into them, right? And so, that's something that I'm seeing a lot happening. And, we'll get into the big greens a little later, but I'll stop there for now. Thanks. Just keep going.
If I can actually quote Dr. Bullard when he said that there's a difference between a job and the promise of jobs, and there's a difference between economic development and the promise of economic development. They do a lot of big talk, but don't do a lot of walking. So you hear people try to, say different things. Oh, it's wonderful to be trending and, oh, we'll cancel it. That doesn't matter if it's not happening. You can talk about it all you want, but if you're not sitting here breaking your foot off and somebody's behind about something they're doing, it doesn't matter. So, we need more people that are not just talking like we are right now. We're talking about the things that need to happen. But when we get off this Zoom call, we're going to be out there kicking behind. We're going to be taking names. We're going to be doing what we got to do to make this actually happen and get this right, because it's long overdue. We talk about reparations, for example. Well, guess what? With the environmental side of it, look at what we might have to be dealing with soon, right? We've been dealing with this just as long. So it's going to be important for us to not just talk, but to also walk.
Speaking of that, there's been a lot of excitement around Justice 40 and the whole of government approach on environmental justice. If you had 5 minutes to share feedback with the president and his cabinet, what would you share? Open-ended. So anyway, I can go first.
Let me go first. I'll take age privilege. The Justice 40 recommendations have come to the president from the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council. And there are 3 members from Texas, myself, Susana Almanza, who's in Poder, and Juan Paras from Tejas, Dr. Beverly Wright from Deep South Center. So it's just 4 of us from Louisiana. From California, there's Rachel Morella Frost, and there are lots of EJ veterans on there, and there are young people on the intergenerational. And we made it very clear that we want Justice 40 to be something real, And when it comes to the infrastructure, we want to dismantle infrastructure redlining that has occurred in this country that has pushed good stuff over to the white people and put bad infrastructure in our communities. And there's so many good studies now that show that it's so plain and simple how the solutions are just so easy to do, but we have to get beyond that racial thinking that no, we got to treat all communities the same. Hell no. If the money for Justice 40 is going to Austin, it's going to stop in Austin, and I'm talking about the governor's office, not Austin City. And we're going to have to fight for the money in our blue cities in Houston, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio. So that means that some of that money, most of that money, come directly to our cities. And when it comes to the cities, we have to have a framework, a screening tool, and our equity lens that the money goes directly to need. Communities that have historically been left out, been redlined, there's more flooding, more urban heat islands, more pollution, more COVID, more schools that are in disarray in terms of infrastructure. We have to use our leverage and our numbers and the research and the facts and the data to push that. And it only can be done. Having the facts is not enough. We have to make sure that our community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, our institutions are in line and synchronized to force that money to the right places. Otherwise, if you just sit back and wait for it to come, it's going to go to the west side. It's going to go to the same places it's always gone, and it's going to reproduce inequality. Now, I know that for a fact, and because I've done a lot of research on this, I've written on this, and I worked in those communities. We have fought. And Reverend Caldwell is sitting on this call. He knows about Fifth Ward, and then we're going to be fighting to make sure that money goes to Fifth Ward to clean up that toxic, that cancer cluster, and to go to the money where all them community flooded out because of bad infrastructure. That's what we got to fight for, people. We can't just be sitting around waiting for the money to come down. We got to fight to make sure that it comes down in the right way. Now that's going to be a fight. And the same forces, as I said before, that's trying to stop us from voting in Texas, us meaning Black and brown and other people of color, the same forces don't want the money to come to our communities. So it's the same fight.
Yeah, no, I guess I'll go next. Yeah, I totally agree with that 100%, you know, and that's the same thing we're seeing across in our communities and across the country, you know, that money needs to make it to these EJ communities. And if, because we already know it's going to go, like Dr. Bullard said, to the west side, to the affluent, to the urban core of every city across the country. And again, you know, it's going to put our communities of color for, you know, the inequality is going to grow even further. I mean, we're already there. But another thing that I wanted to add on that is that, you know, we're not standing and waiting to see where that money is going to go, right? We need to be there. There's just so many places where this money goes, right? It's like, how is one small grassroots organization who's really vocal about the front lines has the capacity to do all this? I mean, there were these other structures that they did not think about. Like, okay, we're sending the money, but I'm already seeing the money going to through the EPA programs, the PACES, the Department of Defense, the DOE, even the local EPA watershed programs. A guy there told me, he goes, you know what? They're already calling me to send, they're going to send the Justice 40 money. We don't know what we're doing with it. Well, you know what? Partner with us. We'll tell you how to do it. You know, let's figure it out. But, you know, they're like, you know, but they're just telling us to fill out whatever just to make it sound good. So we know these things are structural and they're going to continue to happen. We know these policies and programs are, you know, just, you know, they're flawed programs when it comes to people of color. But when it comes to white people, oh, there you go. And so these NPOs that I mentioned earlier, you know, we're very, you know, we know what's going to happen already. And if we're not at the table, if we're not there, even if we're at the table, it's going to be a big fight. But we already know that we have this other problem happening in every community across the country to making sure that that money does make it to those communities. And so, yeah, I think, yeah. But, you know, I also wanted to add, there's a lot of great leaders at the White House EJ Council that have been part of this for a long time, and they know they're bringing in, you know, all the right recommendations. But at the end of the day, our communities are like so far from that decision making over there that we just need to be at the table as much as we can everywhere. That's real. So, thanks.
Richelle or Alexia, do you have anything to add?
I mean, for what it's worth, I think that we definitely have to make it clear to our communities, make sure we understand if we're not at the table discussing that menu, we're gonna be on the menu. And we've been on the menu a long time. And even though, now we're having a seat, but like you said, we have some great people and at the White House and in the White House and doing the work, but we need to make sure they are really sitting there helping plan that menu and making sure that nobody, no matter how big the community is or how small, is not on the menu. They're not a part of what's being done to communities and saying it's being done for the community. We have to make sure that's not actually happening. And we haven't done that. And we have to push harder and we have to be in front. And even if we got to go back to saying, hell no, we won't go, whatever it takes is what we need to be doing. So, I hope that they give it their all and that we are right there making sure they give it their all.
Could I just say something else?
Sure.
Let me be clear. Where the rubber hits the road is at the city and the county level in terms of influencing your local officials, the planning departments, and when you get to the regional level, that's the MPO, that's the transportation dollars, that's the environmental planning, etc. And local folks, if you organize and mobilize and get to understand how it works and how you can impact the programs that are Justice 40 priority programs, and as the money comes down, you can impact what your city planning department and your city council members are pushing forward, and your organizations can assist and support the right kinds of competitive proposals to go after the money. And some of us who are out there who have, like our center, we're going to be working with communities to assist and support the organizations to get their local officials to go for the money, for the proposals to go to the communities of greatest need. We're not going to leave it to the regular process. And there are groups all over the country now that are ready to work with community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, civil rights organizations, lawyer groups to file lawsuits when they're saying, well, that money should be going over here. The money's being diverted to a port just to build out something, and when it should be going to the community, et cetera. So when the rubber hits the road, it's the local. The national folks are going to do X up here, but the real organizing mobilization on the ground is to try to get our community-based organizations and neighborhood associations and civic clubs and other groups up to speed on what Justice 40 is and the potential that it has, and where money could be targeted for those different programs. We're talking housing, we're talking issues around parks and green space, school infrastructure, we're talking energy. I mean, there's so many programs. You start naming all the programs, and when the money gets put down, we have to say, no, every program that comes down for money at the regional, the state, and the city, and the county and the city level, we should have our organizations ready. That means we have to get our resources to those organizations that may not be resourced. And that's where foundations come in, and that's where university centers come in, and that's where ones that you can trust, because there are other folks at university, they're working for carbon capture and storage. We don't want them working on Justice 40, like here in Houston with ExxonMobil trying to put CCS in the middle of the ship channel next to communities of color that's already been poisoned with pollution. We say, no, we're going to fight that.
Alexia, do you have anything to add?
No, I just what everyone says is great, and also I think education and like infrastructure is going to be something that's huge. Just like able to even the capacity to accept large sums of money for a lot of grassroots organization is a struggle, and so I think that's really important. And I'm hopeful, but also kind of on the fence, but we'll see what happens.
Definitely. We have a question from the audience or comment from the audience from Marcus.
Peace, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And also, again, thank you to Richelle Lee for the invitation. I'm really enjoying this conversation. My name is Marcus Sibley. I'm the Environmental and Climate Justice Chairman for the New Jersey NAACP, also the Chairman of the New Jersey Progressive Equitable Energy Coalition. And professionally, I am the Northeast Director of Conservation Partnerships for National Wildlife Federation. So I see things from two perspectives, and this is why I want to jump in, make a really quick comment, because from the NAACP side, when we're working with a lot of grassroots organizations, a lot of our organizations, and just real talk, we aren't trusting of a lot of groups, understandably. Historically, we've been exploited, we've been disrespected. We have people writing grants in our names, that we've heard tonight, getting money and then not including us, or when large sums of money comes from the federal government, it doesn't trickle down to the ground where it needs to get to. We're well aware of that. But, and this is why this is really important in this space right now, even though we've had traditional mistrust, if we're gonna make things happen, we have to connect with different groups. We have to understand that they are large, and when I say large, I sit on East Coast Offshore Wind Coalition calls. There are large sums of money right now that we shouldn't be left out of. So as much as we, I don't even want to call it principle, because I mean, there's many reasons why we decide not to work with people. I think that there's a middle ground. I think that you can have integrity, and you can go into meetings and tell people exactly what you're not going to do and what you expect. I think that's the problem. I think we've been exploited a long time, but we can go into these same meetings and say, listen, this is mutually beneficial, and this is what I expect in return. It has to be a transaction, because these big green groups, they need the sign-offs of our grassroots groups. And there are many different grants coming down right now that are explicitly saying you need to work with a frontline organization in order to get the funding that you're going to get. So I'm just saying that it's important for us to go to the table with demands, go to the table with expectations, but we have to go to the table, because there are literal billions, the B, on the table right now. And if we're not in these conversations, there is no chance of it getting to our community. And I mean, no chance. Like I'm on coalitions where I'm the only Black person on the coalition. And if I don't speak up, there's no conversation about job training in Black communities. There's no conversation about job placement for Black and brown brothers and sisters. It's not on their radar. So I'm encouraging everyone to work with groups so you can build your capacity. And then when you build your capacity, you can have different people sitting on these meetings, because we have to be on these meetings. So I just want to put that out there, because as a person who's on meetings all the time, I can tell you, I'm probably one of 3 Black people or brown people on a lot of these calls. And this is where million and billion-dollar transactions are taking place. So we have to get to those tables, but we have to remain high character and high quality, and go to these spaces with integrity and let people know what's not acceptable. It's okay to tell someone something is wrong, but you can't tell them that unless you're speaking to them. We got to stop having these conversations with ourselves, and we got to get into those spaces where the big deals are happening and let people know what our community needs. So I've really enjoyed this conversation. Again, thank you, Richelle, for the heads up. And again, I've been doing work outside, so I'm not dressed properly, so I do apologize for that. But I will pass the mic, and thank you again, and look forward to hearing more of this conversation.
Let me respond to Marcus. Once again, taking privilege in terms of age. Marcus, 1991, we had the first National People of Color Environmental Leadership Summit. 30 years ago this month. And we invited 6 environmental green groups, including National Wildlife Federation. They didn't show up. They said, we don't know what you're talking about. and that was 1991. And so in 1979, when I was doing the Houston study on environmental racism, we asked the NAACP for help. They were missing in action. So let's talk about fast forward today. It's one thing to go in a meeting and be the only Black person, or only person of color, and talk about justice, fairness, and equity, and that at the 91 summit, we developed 17 principles of environmental justice. And the first principle is that people most impacted by pollution must speak for themselves. And the fact that there's billions of dollars on the table does not somehow negate the fact that some of these same companies that want to somehow put an equity lens or equity statement on their website are trying to get permits to poison our communities and with CCS, et cetera. And so just because, and they're calling it a climate solution, false solution. We need to be in those rooms challenging those individuals, those corporations, not trying to get money from them. And the fact is that the other thing is, I think it's important that when we understand that when we start training, educating, and getting people who are informed about clean energy and energy justice, energy insecurity, and to talk about real solutions in terms of democratizing access to clean energy and renewable, because the same energy apartheid that locked Black people out of oil and gas in terms of employment and in terms of businesses ownership, the renewables and clean energy is following that same path. So we have to be in those rooms advocating for a just transition, and in terms of what it means for a clean energy economy that's just, and not leaving the dirty coal plants in our communities as they exist today. The dirtiest, the 12 dirtiest coal-fired coal plants, the dirty dozen, represent, if you look at a 3-mile radius, 75% of the people who live within a 3-mile radius of the dirty dozen are people of color. So there is no success story when it comes to transitioning off of coal and whatever. We have to point those things out in those rooms when we sit in those rooms, and not be asking for dollars. We have to point out we're asking for justice, demanding justice. And if it means partnering with a real, true partner that's doing clean energy, doing real solution on climate, we can say there's a partnership. Now that's just how it works. Now I'm not saying that's what you were saying. All I'm saying is in reality, we have people going to those rooms cutting deals who look like me.
Of course.
And saying, well, we want a part of that, and basically selling out the community and creating problems for us in the long run, because they're saying it's not dirty money. That there's no such thing as dirty money. We'll say there's blood on that money.
You're 100% correct. And one thing that anybody in the justice, environmental justice movement in New Jersey will tell you, I'm not cut from that cloth. What I don't do is make excuses for people from my organization or from my job for what they've done in the past. Only thing I can do is I can tell you what we do today.
Well, I can tell you some more recent history. I'm not talking 1990. I'm talking about in 2020 in terms of some of the groups that are green groups. I won't call a name, but that are going in, talking about environmental education, talking about coming up with solutions, in terms of, and they have not included anybody in those rooms at the decision-making level.
And this is what I'm saying. I don't speak, and again, I don't want to go off target, but I just want to make this part clear. I don't speak for what anybody else is doing. I'm talking about for what we do here in New Jersey, from New Jersey State Conference, NAACP Environmental and Climate Justice Committee. I invite anyone to Google what we're doing. We're all about clean. We're all about jobs. We're all about job trainings. And any meeting that we sit on, we absolutely don't take money and be quiet. We take money to build our capacity. but every room that we're in is to advocate for Black people specifically, and brown and other people of color. We understand what the past is. We have many sellouts in NAACP. We have many sellouts in our government. We have many sellouts. Any place where people have opportunity, there was an opportunity for selling out. But I can tell you from my branch, where I'm the president in the NAACP, as well as my committee on the statewide level, as well as my job, where in my capacity, what we bring to the table is integrity and character and understanding where we need to get to. So I 100% agree with everything you said. There are many people who haven't done the right things for very long times. And what I'm saying, what we need to do is acknowledge and use that as leverage to get the things that we need. What we need to do is build capacity so we can be in more rooms, so we can advocate for just transition, and we can advocate for education in our schools and more green spaces and more opportunities for development. We need to do those things. So please understand, I agree with everything you said, and I don't take offense to anything you said, because you're right.
You're right. What the bottom line, what I was saying is that people of color will not find our salvation in white organizations that may have color coordinated. Our own people of color organizations will probably move that envelope much further, like the NAACP, more so than the National Wildlife Federation. That doesn't mean that we don't work with them, but in terms of moving that envelope on the justice issue, history has always shown that having our organizations of color be the tip of the spear will push us closer to getting to that North Star.
100%.
It doesn't mean that we're going to eliminate having those other opportunities.
But I would also,
so if you don't mind, I will do 2 quick questions and open up to the audience for more questions. One question: who is maintaining the environmental justice narrative? And how is that influenced by the media? And then lastly, what is your hope for the future? And open to the 4 of you to respond, and then I'll open up for questions.
Yeah, I can go real quick. One thing we don't do is take money from corporations. I don't care what promises they put at the table. We won't take money from corporations as an organization and the EJ movement. I wanted to say that because I just also wanted to make a comment to what you mentioned, Marcus, of, even those groups that want to extract, sometimes they just not there yet, right? And we try to have these conversations. So it's not like the ultimate, shut the door on them. I make them understand that process, what it means. We'll get there, and it's still working through the relationship. It's like a relationship building, right? It takes time. But when it comes to the big greens, I think that they are still, I think now the paradigm is changing. EJ groups are being up, and I think it's part of what's been happening in the last couple of years, that funders know that EJ is the one doing the work, not the big greens speaking for us at the capitals, at the DC, but the people doing the work on the ground. We know that for numbers of years that the money has funneled to them, but they're not doing the underground work. They can talk policy, they can talk all they want, but the real work is happening on the ground. And some of the most recent things working with these big greens is really letting them know that, because we work with big greens, but they know their place in the room. They know that they get behind us. We put comment letters, we submit something, you're not going to turn around and comment in our community before we see, it could take a week or 2 weeks, but you're not going to do it in an hour span anymore. And we're working through these processes because, either they're in support with us, we're not here to disagree anymore. It's either we're here to lead, and they're going to get behind us and support us, and they can sign on to our letters from the community. And that's what we're going to do moving forward, not the other way around, that, just because they can do that letter and now we're turning it in by the morning. No, wait a minute. That's not how grassroots work. That's not. So, it's not just the work on the ground, but it's also working with our partners and academics and everyone. This is like Dr. Bullard said, it is everywhere. We're trying to make sure that we can cover everything, because it's not just the corporations, it's our universities, it's everywhere. And we need to change that. So I'll stop there, because I just don't want to get really passionate right now. So go ahead, I'll pass it to Alexia.
Hi, so I'll try to answer the question. I think as a young person, social media, like, I don't know, is a part of my life. And I know a lot of people, a lot of youth's life. And I think it can be a powerful tool, but I think we have to be careful whose voices are being highlighted. Especially like celebrities or influencers, people who aren't, in grassroots community, people who aren't doing the work tend to speak the loudest. And I think we really, again, like everything that has says, have to uplift, the people living in frontline communities, people that are actually organizers and doing the work on the ground. And then I guess in regards to my hope for the future, obviously like environmental justice, land back for, for a world where that is built on community care and not these extractive economic practices that, is, harming communities of color, that is murdering and killing communities of color. And so, yeah, I actually hope that, we can get to a place where communities of color don't have to work this hard just to survive and just to get basic human rights, and that people don't have to organize 24/7 and sacrifice, their joy and spending time with family in order to just have, basic human rights.
I guess I'll take it after Alexia. And you both, you and Beto have definitely hit that nail right on the head. And I would like to answer, at least from a social media standpoint, we're so afraid of this cancel culture, right? And we need to have more consequences than canceling. Again, I say we need to have more consequences. Consequences mean there's accountability, right? We need to hold people accountable. And if we're going to do anything on social media, then we need to hold people accountable. We don't need to just be canceling people out and then, oh, yay, they're gone. No, they're not going, especially if they have money. So, you want to definitely make sure you're using that for the greater good if possible. But more importantly, I hope to see in the future the bridge, between the young and well, I don't like to say the old because my parents told me to say seasoned generation. I would love to be able to see us work together and really work together, not tear each other apart, and learn from each other and actually push this forward so that we can actually make a difference. And I think that it's important that we sit at the feet of our elders. That's where all the good stuff comes from. And I grew up being taught that over and over and over again. So again, I hope that we're not using social media just to cancel things out, but rather to hold people accountable. But more importantly, we're there holding ourselves accountable as well and making sure we're doing the work. And I hope to see more people doing the work, not just talking about the work, not just trending the work, not just saying, oh yeah, here's some money. We got money for the work. Oh, we started the work over here. No, actually doing the work and are seeing changes in our communities that are positive and that, are actually something that's helping us grow, not just, from an environmental side, but from an economic side, right? From every angle. We don't have food deserts anymore. We need to start tackling all of it. And I know once we do that, then we'll see that difference we need.
Now I guess I'll open it up if anyone has any questions. I know Dr. Bullard, you have to run to a meeting. Does anyone have any questions? I'll open up for about 10 minutes or so. I apologize for running over.
I could just imagine how it was during the principles, just trying to get all this information and then put it in on paper. Oh my God. Is that a lot of, how was that? I know someone asked that earlier, but I'd like to hear from Dr. Bullard. You were there, so how was that process? If you have time.
Oh, I was getting ready to sign off and thank everybody. It was very difficult because it was the first time doing something, but we planned for it. It was a 4-day summit. First 2 days, we said it's only going to be people of color, because racism, colonialism, imperialism was in the room with people of color. And so we just said we had to shed that. Mm-hmm. And then after we got together and got to know each other, we said we going to bring in the white people, and we opened it up to everybody. And it was learning. It was 4 days of learning, 4 days of getting to know, 4 days of trying to build trust, because there was so much mistrust or misunderstanding on stereotypes, and we still have some of that. So we have to still learn and grow. Yeah. But we made a lot of progress on it, and I think we have to make more, particularly as we move to 2045 and the country becomes majority people of color, and so we have to stop thinking about, quote, minority in a number and think about majority, running things, controlling, and making decisions. And I think that's a transition that we need to start now, and not wait until 24 years from now or whatever. I got to run, everybody. I've enjoyed it. I love my young people. My whole career has been working with young people, 18, 21-year-olds. I love them.
I love you too, Dr.
Hey, Cheryl. I didn't see you, baby. I gotta go.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Yeah, wanted to open up if anyone in the audience has any questions.
I just want to say, Brother Marcus hit it on the head. You nailed it. It's just the fact that, you know, here in Illinois, I know exactly what you're talking about. When sitting and being the only Black person, sometimes sitting on these working groups, as they call them here, and being avid about my neighborhood. And, you know, when I sit in those meetings, I try to be the devil advocate. Like, you know, so we just passed the CEJA bill, Climate Equity Job Act, because we had a bill prior to that called the Future Energy Job Act. And it focused on a lot for solar in EJ communities. But when it came down to the contracting opportunity to become vendors, they set all these different types of requirements that small Black contractors can't meet financially. So with CEJA, I was able to be that devil and pound them like, how you expect for me to be a successful contractor when it's competitive with people, with groups that are contractors already established, got a whole lot of money. I don't have no money, you know, stuff like that. But this brother named Delmar, he's worked with Elevate, and he was able to write that stuff the way that he understood that I come from. And now, once you get to go through the incubator, that's for people who are interested, just starting a business in the solar industry. Then once you get past that year of training, then you go to the accelerator. The Accelerator Program is where I'm at with, because I'm a contractor also, and I now run a nonprofit. So they're guaranteeing us up to $1 million for the next 3 years to make sure that our businesses is successful. So now it just passed. The governor just signed it a little over a month ago. Now we're in the implementation stages of it. So my voice got to be present during the implementation, because they can allocate $1 billion to our neighborhood, but not one single dime will come to our neighborhood. So I don't want that to happen. You know, the electrical unions play a lot of roles in getting the funding because they connected with ComEd, they provide the energy. But the IBEW is one of the racist unions that I ever seen in my life, that we have to break them down. I mean, I almost got in a fist fight just so that my people can have opportunity in the trade and be trained right and don't be discriminated. They went through extremes where they got connections with the clinics, medical clinics, where you go get tested for drugs and you come out positive and you know you don't do drugs. That was unbelievable. I walked that walk with this sister. And I had to fight. And then they said, once you test positive, you can't come back. I said, well, she should have opportunity to touch twice, because she said that she don't do drugs. And y'all saying it is. So let's get this test. So they want her to go back to the same clinic. I said, no, we ain't going back to the same clinic. We're going to another different clinic that's in their perusal that they contract with. Went way over there to where the white folks' neighborhoods at. Clinic. It was 24 hours, one of those urgent care places. She went there, came out negative. Do you know that bastard had the audacity to ask me, did I go with her? Was this for real? So I'm just saying, so these are some of the challenges that when you start advocating for our neighborhoods and trying to get those real dollars to come down, man, it's a fight. And you got to be willing to stand up there and throw those punches just as much as they throw them, because they putting up all these roadblocks. We know that from the trade industry. But what the trade industry failed to realize, that they was holding these spots for their kids and nieces and nephews. But guess what? Their kids and nieces and nephews don't want to do this type of work. You sent them to college to be educated. Now you in retirement zone and y'all don't even have young people coming in. And then young people is not even being union because y'all don't represent nobody. I mean, I like unions and I don't like them. I don't like the practice that they use, but I believe in the philosophy that they was developed upon. But it's just a total fight, y'all. We gotta keep rolling with the punches. As they throw a hit, we throw one back. Just keep on fighting, y'all. And that's my
and if I can jump in really, really quickly, and thank you for those kind words, Cheryl. But just to give a little insight about what we're doing here in New Jersey. The NAACP is a volunteer organization. And as we all know, the environmental justice fight isn't really something you can do during volunteer hours. It's difficult. A lot of these meetings are happening 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m. So what we've done, as I'm speaking about getting to these tables, we partnered to get grants to build our capacity. So we had grants that allow us to now be able to get to these tables and be able to attend these meetings. So the money, as I'm talking about, allows us to do the advocacy. Of course, there are people out here taking money just to get rich. No, we're taking money so we can get to the table and advocate for our people. So when I'm on these different coalition calls, that was through a grant that allowed me to be on these calls so I can then be the voice of our community, because there was no voice for the community. Another grant that we just wrote is to have environmental and social justice presentations in high schools. So these are grants that we wrote. We're hoping to get it, but we need to educate our young people so we can build a pipeline of younger and younger people who are understanding of the environmental racism and understanding the different forms of environmental racism, so that all of us have successors. So the only reason I make that point is because money is just like any other resource. It's bad when you use it incorrectly. If we're getting money to build our capacity, we're getting money to have scholarships for young people, we're getting money so that our different organizations can have full-time staffs. We're getting money so that we can have attorneys on staff. So when we're in these council meetings, the polluters have attorneys, we need attorneys. If we're using our brain and start playing chess, and instead of playing checkers like we played for so long, then we can move this movement to the next level. But if we don't work together, if we don't learn how to play chess, these same people are going to continue to get rich. These same industries are going to continue to pollute our communities, and our communities are going to be the ones suffering these health impacts. So I just try to put out there, like, we have to be creative in this game, because I can tell you, the people in these meetings are very crafty, and they find every trick in the book in order to get all the money that comes down to make sure you don't get it. Because the way capitalism works, someone has to suffer in order for capitalism to work. That's how the game is played, and we have to be aware of that. So again, please don't assume everybody who's in the table is a sellout, because I can tell you straight up, I can point out a few people here in New Jersey and some of the groups that Mr. Martinez pointed out. These are the same groups that we're at these tables together, giving them help. So let's not dismiss everybody who's at the table. We still have some soldiers at the table, but we need more. This is why we have to continue to build our capacity so we can get more people in these different tables, because at every time of the day, there are multiple meetings going on. And if it's only one Marcus, it's only one Richelle, only one Alexia, one Cheryl, we can't be everywhere. So we have to continue to build capacity so we can be in more places. So again, thank you for this opportunity to share, and keep up this great work. And please, if there's a list I can join so I can be notified for the upcoming events, I would love to know more about these different events. So thanks so much.
Hey, Marcus, are you working with Michael Leclercq?
Michael, you know what organization he's from?
He does. I think because I think he told me it was work. I can't name it. He's got a consulting firm.
Okay. Yeah, his name doesn't ring a bell, unfortunately, but yeah, I'm
I
on
think he was
LinkedIn.
talking about you guys working on some projects in New Jersey.
Okay. Well, listen, I'm on LinkedIn, so any information, just hit me up.
Okay.
And we can connect.
If we don't have any more comments or questions for our panelists, wanted to thank them for joining. And this was a really enlightening conversation. I hope it was to all of you as well. I'll stay back if anyone has any questions. But yeah, thank you all for being here. Yeah, hope to see you soon.
Thank you for putting this together.